Hey, I'm Daniel.
Hey, I'm Eric. We're here at the Anniston Museum of Natural History in Alabama. Great place to be.
Look at that, Eric is blessed. Look at him, he's blessed all his socks off.
What we'd like to do on this trip is show you what to expect when you go into a natural history museum and how you can educate your kids on the truth of the real history.
That's right, because a lot of people think it's safe and fun and educational to send their kids to the museum. They think, oh, what harm could it be? They're going to learn lots of exciting things. Well, we're going to go in and see how safe it really is. Let's check it out. All right, so admission fee is $6 per adult. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pay for Eric and he's going to pay for me.
I get in free.
Yeah, that way we both get in for free. Huh?
This is awesome. First thing we're going to do is explore our world. Wow, this is the very beginning of what is sure to be a great museum exhibit.
Close up.
You can't get too close.
This place right over here, see, I walked all the way across that.
Oh, that's right.
Huh?
4,129 miles worth of walking.
That is correct. All right, so here we are at the very front entrance of the Museum of Natural History. And we don't have to come far before we get over here.
And they say it's a privileged planet. The Earth is rare. There's only one of them. That's how rare it is.
Well, as you come in, you'll notice there's lots of things that introduce us to the faith, should I say? The faith of the museum and what they're teaching in the public education. They start out with the geologic column, which of course we know doesn't exist anywhere in the world except in the textbooks and in the museums.
So it's interesting that they start off talking about their preconceived ideas. They start off saying, we're going to interpret everything in this museum according to this geologic column.
And so don't be fooled if you think your kids aren't getting inundated with strange thoughts and strange beliefs. Well, just go to some local museums and check it out for yourself.
Start right here. They start off with the Paleozoic Seas. Now, they don't necessarily have to put the millions of years on here because it was right back here on the geologic time scale.
That's right. So that's the skeleton, and these are all the clothes that kind of fit into that little skeletal structure that they've already created.
So your preconceived idea is the geologic column, and then after that, you start going through. So the indoctrination starts at the very beginning. You know, it's kind of like a story that I heard. A man once upon a time left home jogging. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left, and he jogged back home. As he was jogging home, he noticed there were two masked men waiting for him at home. Who were the masked men and why did he leave home jogging? See, if your first thought was wrong and you thought of a house, you're going to be off for the rest of the story and you're going to have no clue. But if you think of home plate, you're going to have a better idea. So don't get confused at the very beginning of the museum.
And at the very beginning, of course, they tell us about the geologic column and the ages and the billions and billions of years, and then they go right into dinosaurs. So it gets associated. So when your kids are growing up, now the nice thing is when your kids are growing up, even as adults, we walk through museums and even zoos, and we don't read the stuff. We just walk through. We want to see the cool exhibit, like, oh, check out the Stegosaurus, check out the Camarasaurus skull and all the other different stuff. Here's the Brachiosaurus neck bone over there. That's pretty fascinating. But they see all that, and they don't really stop down and read the indoctrination process, which is kind of nice. So as long as they don't read the things, they can usually skate through pretty easy and not be too influenced by any of the kind of the religious teaching of the public system.
Now, one thing that I think is really cool is that if you started with a proper worldview, a biblical worldview, that God created the world, that He created everything to go together, and that there was a worldwide flood that destroyed the world, all of this could make sense in the biblical worldview as well.
The problem is, if we do something like that in a museum, it's not going to be funded by the city like this one is. It's not going to be funded by the government or the state or any of that kind of stuff. It's going to be funded by like-minded Christians who really want to put money into something like that.
The reason it's hard to get the city or the state to fund a museum based on creation is because they say, well, that's a religious worldview. Well, hold the phone. This whole thing, starting with the geologic column, is based on a religious worldview. You don't know that those ages are millions of years old. You believe that it's millions of years old. So What we have here is state-funded religious indoctrination.
And the tricky thing is they have tons of really good stuff here. It's like rat poison. It's 99.9% good food. And so you look around and you'll see the exhibits of rocks and fossils, all sorts of really good educational stuff. But there's that little bit of poison in there that mixes with it that really ruins the whole thing. And so if you walk through here and you're really reading stuff and you're learning things and you're thinking, hey, well, these people who built this and put it together, they know what they're talking about, so I can trust what these signs say. Well, that's your first mistake. So you're going to blindly trust what these men have written and say, but you're not going to give the same treatment to the Bible and what God said. Because that's a written documentation by somebody who was there. God. He knows everything, and he can't lie. So we should probably trust him.
Well, they say the death of the dinosaurs is possibly because of an asteroid, and the reason they're saying this is that because iridium clay is found in a thin layer, they say, all over the Earth, which I got a question.
And the cool thing about this is it says, according to one scientific theory, their extinction was caused by a comet or a meteor. Well, what about the others? What are the other? How come they don't have up here that says, according to one theory, there was a worldwide flood about 4,400 years ago that killed off most of everything on the planet except for 8 people on a boat and 2 of every kind of animal and 7 of some. That's not written up here because they deem that to be religious. But this is just as religious. The only problem is this isn't supported by any facts or any kind of truth, whereas the Bible is. It's crazy.
Now, some people would say, oh, the reason they don't have that in there is because there's not enough evidence. But when you've got over 270 cultures around the world that have a legend of a worldwide flood in their history, I think we can lend some credibility to that. I think we're doing okay, all right?
So we got the Albertosaurus, the Triceratops, the Pteranodons. One thing I like is right here is the Ichthyosaur Fossil, which is pretty neat because so far they've kind of established in the museum that fossils are evidence of things that happened long ago and far away. But then right here you have an Ichthyosaur fossil, and if you read this and you look at it, it says that it died while giving birth to a baby Ichthyosaur, which is interesting because if it takes a long period of time to fossilize something, then why do we have a preserved birthing process right here in the floor of the museum? You know, that would cause me to rethink my whole frame of how I categorize everything and say, well, wait a minute, if it's fossilized like this, then that certainly couldn't have taken long, unless that's a million-year process of a birth, but I don't think so. So you got to look at the evidence a little more objectively.
Now, they got some great stuff on dinosaurs, and I love studying dinosaurs. I love history. This really is fun. One of the things they do, though, is they talk about how, well, hey, these teeth are obviously from a carnivore. But the truth is we can't know just from the teeth if it's a carnivore or not. So a little bit of indoctrination going on there. You might want to educate your kids about that.
So are there any animals alive today that have sharp teeth that aren't carnivores?
Yes, there are. The fruit bat, hello. Bears, hello. Even though they're omnivores, I know. But the panda bear isn't. He is a vegetarian.
He likes the bamboo. And the, what is it, the langur monkey? Langur, I don't know, Google it. I can't quite figure out how to say
let's
it.
hit this. Okay. Now, Daniel and I found this display really interesting. It talks about the 3 different kinds of rock and the one kind that you can't make.
That's right. It talks about igneous rocks. We got sedimentary, metamorphic, but igneous talks about granite. So it's talking about the formation of granite. It says, formed from the lava that pours out onto the Earth's surface and cools quickly. Okay, granite, another type of igneous rock, forms when lava cools slowly. Well, see, that's scientifically wrong, because granite is one of the only things that we can't figure out how to make. And one of the reasons why we can't figure out how to make it is because of the polonium halos and stuff that are in there. And those things, without getting all scientific, but those little microscopic circles, those halos that are inside granite, and it's granite all over the world. Every type of granite has these halos. And so those prove that it couldn't have formed slowly, and it couldn't have been hot, because if it took more than like 30 minutes for it to form, then those halos wouldn't be in the rock. So those would have had to form really quickly, just like the Bible says. You know, God said, let there be land, and boom, there was land.
They happen to have a display on Mount St. Helens, and it's a good thing because that's like one of the biggest things that's ever happened to planet Earth that we've recorded, that we've measured, that we've studied. All the studies about Mount St. Helens go to show that it's evidence of a worldwide flood. The rapid mud movement stratified into layers. It blocked off a river, which built a dam. When it finally overflowed a few weeks later, it carved out a miniature Grand Canyon. The fact that Mount St. Helens is here shows us evidence of the flood, but do they talk about that? No. Instead, they just say, well, it's signs that the Earth's crust continues to move, building mountains and blowing them apart.
Hey, check this out. We got a display on water erosion and the power of it, which is pretty neat. I mean, water is a destructive agent, but you notice it doesn't say anything about a worldwide flood. Why? I don't know. Even though we have evidence of water erosion all over the whole Earth. As a matter of fact, you got billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the Earth.
We're here in the cave formation section, and this is where they tell us the ages of some things like bivalves are 65 million years old. The fossil horned corals are 400 million years old. These are 300 million years old. And it says, as the cave's walls erode, what happens here is you can actually date. These bits of stone give us clues to the bygone life and help in determining the age of the supporting stone. So notice they're saying here, you can tell how old the rock is based on how old the fossil is that's in the rock. They date the rock by the fossil that's in it.
Notice right here it says a cave formed slowly. It's difficult to tell its exact age. However, an estimation of its age can be made from the geologic age of the rock in which it's found. So they're dating it by the rock that it's found in. But now this is interesting. Check out this picture. Let's think critically about this. If it's found in this layer, like say this is a big cave, if it's found in this layer, and you say, well, that's how old the cave is. Well, if the cave really started back then it wouldn't have been a cave because it's in that layer. There's no roof at that point. See what I'm saying? So you'd have to wait millions of years for the Earth to form over those pockets to close in and make big rooms inside the Earth. So if a cave is just as old as the layers that it's found in, that doesn't make sense because it wasn't a cave when it started. It was just the land.
All right, this is more of a fun room that's got all kinds of stuff like an earthquake table. You can stand on there and feel what an earthquake feels like. You get to learn about different animals, the bullfrog, the owls, the hawk, the squirrel, things like that. So you get to have a little bit of fun here. Look, boys and girls, it's a gray squirrel. Pretty cool. Oh, but then right in the middle of all the fun stuff, follow me. You're going to want to watch out for this. Here they go into that geologic time scale again, assuming that the layers of rock are all millions of years different in age. And that is, again, the assumption and the problem. So, all the way back at the beginning, what we saw with the geologic column, which doesn't exist anywhere in the world, here it shows up again in the playroom, again to try to help indoctrinate the kids.
Now the cool thing is, check this out. You come down to the bottom, 250 million years ago, and they still use BC. Look at that. I guess they haven't updated their signs in the past 25 years. So they've been pushing that BCE and ACE stuff for a long time. But fossil records indicate that some of the oldest living things on Earth are ferns and insects. So using the evolutionary mindset, I would have to say that that's the building block of life. Must be ferns and insects. So from that you can build dinosaurs, you can build the grizzly bear, you can build Eric Hovind. It's crazy.
All right, here they're teaching the kids about the time scale. And we get down here to, 140 million years before Christ. Interesting. It says, hey, it's clawed its way to the top of a tree. It spread its feathered wings and sailed down to snatch an insect. What is it? Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the Archaeopteryx. Interesting because it says it's 140 million years old. That is a real picture.
Or is it a real drawing?
That's a real picture of a drawing. And what they find is there are animals alive today that have this capability, that have teeth in their beaks and claws on their wings, like for example the ostrich. So I don't think we can say this is 140 million years old for sure.
So now we get this beautiful display of all these animals, and in the middle of it, it's talking about predators and design and well, sorry, not design. They don't want to teach that, but attack and defense mechanisms. And they say, warning, it's all right to feel sorry for animals who are killed, but feeling anger towards predators is wrong. Okay, so there's a moral thing that they're teaching right there. It says, remember that if there were no predators such as the wolf, bear, snake, wildlife populations would dwindle from starvation, overpopulation, and disease. When it comes to attack and defense, there are no good guys and no bad guys, only survivors. Now here's the interesting thing. If we follow the mindset of evolution and molecules to man, and we've gone through all the different stages and we're evolved, we're just highly evolved animals just like these, well then how come it's wrong for us to have predators? But it's wrong for us to think predators are bad in the animal kingdom. But yet we don't get the same thing as humans? Because when we ask questions like that to atheists and people like that who attack the Bible, they want to say, well, it's survival of the fittest, but it's to preserve the kind. You know, we work together as a whole unit to preserve mankind, and so we have to be nice to each other, and it just doesn't fit, because the animal kingdom isn't nice to each other. It's survival of the fittest. It's kill or be killed. You survive, then your species propagates. You know, your genes are passed on, and the people that die, well, they're just gone because they're too weak to survive. So it should be the same for humans. Let's just kill the weaker and just move on. There should be no prison, no court system, no moral judgments. But it is wrong to feel anger towards predators.
Now, right after that warning saying, hey, you can't be mad at the predators, that's just what they do, that's the way they were made, they show us this beautiful elk here, beautiful wolves, and they say, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the survival of the fittest. This elk herd will benefit whether it lives or dies. If the wolf kill it, the elk is proven weak and not good enough to father a new generation. If he escapes, the wolf is one step further, escapes the wolves, he's one step closer to being the herd's one and only breeding male. So, it's all about survival of the fittest for animals, which...
But are we just an animal?
That's what we are, isn't it? Yeah.
That's what they tell us. Yet they don't act like it.
Inconsistent.
Yeah, and so as Christians, that's one thing that we would like to try to enforce. It's like, okay, if you're going to have that theology, if you're going to believe in survival of the fittest, and you're going to believe in animals and evolution and molecules to man, then live by it. Actually, live according to your belief system. Be consistent. Quit using the morality of Christianity. See, you can't borrow from the Christian worldview if you're going to attack the Christian worldview. It just doesn't make sense. Okay. Check this out. They have all the different kinds of snakes. They show the chemical snakes that are poisonous. They show the constrictor snakes. And then they show this guy, the hiss, puff, and die. This guy actually plays dead. He can roll over and puff up and play like he's dead, which is a pretty neat little mechanism. Because then you come over here, just a couple of feet, and you come to something known as the possum. Now, I like these guys because obviously they play possum. So they feign death, death feigning. And so the opossums do it when they're faced with an escapable danger. Well, this is interesting because I'm connecting the dots with the evolutionary theory here, because look at their tails. Look at their long, windy, wrapping tails. Obviously, they carry the same behavior as those snakes over there that play dead because they've evolved from snakes. See, there were snakes, and then over here you can still see the remnants of it by the long tail. Makes sense. Evolution is a wonderful thing.
I found this fascinating. They've got a buffalo skull here. Of course, it's not fossilized, it's actually the bones. And a picture with literally tens of thousands of buffalo heads right here. Buffaloes were slaughtered by the millions in the United States of America for money. They wanted to get money out of it. Well, evolutionists say fossilization, happens when an animal dies and is buried. If you go out west, you know how many fossils of buffalo you find that they killed? None. They don't exist. Why? Because they weren't buried in a catastrophic event like a worldwide flood. Yet around the world we find billions of fossils. What's the problem? They weren't buried in a worldwide flood like the rest of them were.
Hey, check this out. We're coming into the birds. And here they start out with special design. They talk about birds are warm-blooded, they're egg-laying vertebrates, only types of animal covered with feathers, all sorts of unique things about these birds. Yeah, even down here, they've evolved specialized eyes, feet, wings, and other features that allow it to survive in its environment. So birds are very unique to the rest of the animal kingdom. But then you come around the corner right here, and obviously they want to connect dinosaurs to birds. And so they have a whole display here from reptile to bird. And notice they have man-made pencil drawings that show the process of how that happened. And so that's why today they say, well, dinosaurs are still around, they just exist as birds because they've evolved into birds. That's what happened. Even here, bird relatives. So this is the closest living relative to a bird is crocodiles and such. Crocodiles and alligators. That is just weird. So if you want to get religion out of the textbooks, religion out of the public school, religion out of the museums, you can start with places like this. Because this is faith, and it's silly. Lots and lots of birds. If you guys haven't seen The Big Year yet with Jack Black, Owen Wilson, Steve Martin, that is hands down the best movie about bird watching ever made in Hollywood.
All right, we've gone through the bird area. Now we're at the Africa area. This is just absolutely stunning, all the mounts that they've got in here to make this look good. But once again, notice, just like at the very beginning of the museum, just like at the very beginning of the bird display, pushing evolution, look at what they say, adaptation to the environment. And here it goes, adapt or die. They've been adapting for 2 million years. So once again, if our first thought is wrong, we're going to be off the whole rest of the story. That's why they put this stuff right at the beginning.
I notice how they put this over here. They don't really teach anything directly with it, but it's kind of an indirect thing. They show this Gerenuk, if that's how you pronounce it, I have no idea. But it's a peculiar mammal in Africa. It's sometimes known as the giraffe neck gazelle. So it's almost an indirect way of saying, check it out, the gazelle, you could just imagine over millions of years would eventually elongate its neck more and more.
Trying to reach the higher branches.
And it would somehow turn into a giraffe.
Eventually he would get that big. I love the work that they've done here in the museum. I mean, it really is absolutely incredible. What I don't like is the indoctrination. That's the problem. Kids are coming here and getting indoctrinated. Lots of great things to educate them, but at the beginning of each stage, they make sure and indoctrinate them.
All right, now we're going into ancient Egypt. I know that because that's what the floor tiles tell me. And the signs up here. But we go into ancient Egypt, what they have is a really cool display, which is pretty neat, probably pretty expensive and rare. They have real mummies here, okay? And they have a little documentary movie that shows how they got the mummies here and who donated them and how they smoothly got them here so that they didn't fall apart and get destroyed. But here's one of the interesting things. If you look at some of the pictures down here by the foot of this one, you see some winged, four-legged creature that kind of has a sort of a dragon-type mystique about him. Now, why would that be there? Because let's say if that is some kind of a dinosaur-like creature, which certainly looks more dinosaurish than almost anything else, but if that is like a dinosaur-like creature, how could that be? Because dinosaurs weren't excavated and dug up until the 1800s. And of course, this mummy's a lot older than that. Could they have seen dinosaurs living? What are the odds?
All right. We just went through the museum and showed you that at the beginning is typically when they do their indoctrination. That's when the problem occurs. The rest of it, great stuff. So if you're going to go to a natural history museum, that's what you need to watch out for.
Yep, so be prepared that when you go into a museum like this, they are teaching a certain worldview. They're teaching a theory. Actually, what they're teaching goes completely against what God tells us in His Word, which is unfortunate. So if that matters to you as a parent, then you better go with your kids to the museums like this and be able to point out stuff like that and get a working knowledge of what God says in His Word and be able to show them that and say, hey, look, here's what really happened, and then here's man's ideas of what happened. So which one are we going to trust?
Cool. I'm ready to go eat lunch.
Me too.
All right.